When you get groups of people together, you have like little icebreaker things, probably to drum up conversation and get people talking and thinking and all of that. And one of my favorite like icebreaker type things is to get people to think of this. If we were to make a movie of your life, what would it be like? Would it be a drama? Would it be a comedy? Would it be one of those ironic movies, that's a little bit of both, a dramedy as they call them? Who would star in your movie? What would the script look like? What would the ending look like? Now keep in mind, you're not talking about what happens ahead, but this is the movie of your past. What would the movie of your life look like? For most of us, if we're being honest, it's probably going to be a weird mix. That's why they don't really make movies, that go detail by detail about somebody's life, because most movies need at least an arc that's easy to follow and usually a happy ending. Most days we live in between, though, don't we? My wife will tell you, and I think I've actually kind of convinced her of this over the years. We've been married 16, 17 years now. One of my favorite types of movies are the movies that have an ending where it's like open-ended. Do you know those movies where it's like the storyline doesn't quite resolve, but like whoever the protagonist in the movie is, you kind of just see them walk through an open door and the movie ends. And it's like, well, what happened? And the whole point is, we don't know. Draw your own ending. That's life, isn't it? Our life is this wonderful, beautiful, messy mixture of good and bad, hope and despair, hurt and sorrow and joy. We've been looking at the 12 steps throughout this Lenten season, the 12 steps for everyone, as we call it. And you can look at the 12 steps sort of in you have each step by themselves, and you can kind of look at the 12 steps in sort of a macro movement, if you will. The first 3 steps that we looked at, step 1, to admit our powerlessness. Step 2, that God is the only one who can heal us. Step 3, that we're going to turn our life and our will over to God. Or as a reminder of my favorite way to put it, step 1, I can't. Step 2, God can. Step 3, I think I'll let God. Steps 10 through 12, they call maintenance steps, but I hear that more people call them growth steps. That's at the end of the steps where we look at how we can grow in our life of emotional health, how we can keep a prayer life going, conscious contact with God, how we can share the good news of hope with others, and practice these principles in all of our affairs, the big book says. Now, the messiest part is steps 4 through 9 in the middle. Because steps 4 through 9, once we've had this sort of awakening that we need God in our life, that we cannot save ourselves, and before we get to the place that we're a much healthier, more sane version of ourselves, we've got to deal with what's known as the wreckage of our past. Steps 4 through 9. Step 4, we make a fearless moral inventory. What are the ways in which we struggle as human beings with sin, our character defects, those recurring behavior patterns? We're prone to anger. We're prone to despair. We're prone to manipulate and be selfish. We're prone to these things. Part of it's the way we're wired. Part of it's how we were raised. Part of it is we're just broken human beings and we don't always make good choices. Step 5, we say aloud. To begin to move past these defects of character, we have to say them and name them out loud to ourselves, to God, and to another person. Last week we looked at steps 6 and 7. That we come to a place that we are willing to let go and get out of God's way, so that in step 7 we can say, God, only you can take these defects from me and help me grow beyond them. Step 7 really is dependent on a step 3, that when we give our life and will to God, we mean it. Because as human beings, we tend to want to take all that back every day. God, I give you my life and my will today, but then let a problem come up tomorrow and I'm going to take it back. I'm the one who knows what's best for my life. I don't need to trust in something different than me or beyond me or whatever it may be. We think at least. And so it's this daily practice, this daily reminder that we need God in our lives, that we need God to direct us, that we need God to breathe new life into us, that we need God to show us the way toward healing. And then we get to steps 8 and 9 today. These are the doozies. We've admitted what's wrong with us. We've asked God to help us. But now we have to go back with humility and make a list of people we've hurt and make amends. This is hard. When you look back over your life, we tend to say, well, the movie of my life, and if there's a dramatic portion of my life, let me talk about how someone else has hurt me. I'll tell you all the ways in which you may have lots of them, and that's not to diminish the way that other people have hurt you at all. A lot of people have hurt me too. I could tell you story upon story and keep you here all day. But this is where making amends is different than forgiveness and reconciliation. Making amends says, I have to own my part in difficult situations. This is not go to your friends that hurt you and give them a list of all the ways that they hurt you. Here, sit down. Let me tell you all the ways in which you've done me wrong. That's not what making amends is about. Making amends is to say, no matter what you may or may not have done to me, I have to own my part in it. What your part is between you and God. But if I'm going to go to a place of healing in my life, I have to make right as best I can the ways that I have hurt other people in my past. Now, the kicker of this is we do a step 9 so that we can get in the practice that step 10 is about recognizing the ways we continue to hurt people and mess up because we're human beings. But if we do a good step 9, then we sort of know more in the moment to say, oops, I hurt someone's feelings, but I know how to apologize. Step 9 taught me how to go make this right, and we do it. But it's hard. It's hard to go to somebody else and to say, hey, this is how I hurt you. I mean, it's hard enough to go to somebody and say, hey, this is how you hurt me sometimes, right? But to say, nope, the cliche in 12-step recovery program is that we have to worry about keeping our side of the street clean. What you do on your side of the street around your life, that's your business. And that's hard because I'd much rather tell you what to do on your side of the street than clean my own. But the whole point of this recovery is that I am trying to make amends and clean up the wreckage in my soul that keeps me prone to anger and despair and hopelessness and resentment. One of you posted a story on Facebook this week that I loved. It was it caught my eye because it had a snake in it. And I'm terribly afraid of snakes. Like, I hate them. Whenever anybody posts one of those, what's this snake in my yard? Oh, God, it just gives me the shivers. But one of you posted this story, which was a good story that kind of goes into my point I'm trying to make. It was like a python that was wrapped around a saw, okay? And it said that the snake found itself wrapped around the saw, and that the fable goes that the snake was mad at the saw for causing it pain, so all it did was it continued to grip down tighter and tighter, only leading to more pain. And what the snake didn't realize is that sometimes that you just got to let go, and the pain will heal in time. Now, that's kind of a gory fable of nasty things like snakes, but the point is true. Sometimes in our life, we hold on to resentment so tightly. It's like Anne Lamott said that we drink rat poison expecting the rat over there to die when we drink the poison. And you can hold on to a resentment that over time, slowly but surely, your soul gets sick. And the secret to being healed of that sickness is not holding on to the resentment tighter, but beginning to let it go. One of the ways we can begin to let these resentments go is by stepping back to say, what's my part in this? Maybe I'm not the main one at fault even. Maybe I'm not the one who caused it even, but I had a role in this. And if I can at least own that, and maybe that's the only thing that gets resolved, I can let go of the resentment on my end. Whether that person gets over their part or not, at least I can work on my end and with integrity say I did my best to make this situation better. It's hard. It's hard work because we want to focus so much on the resentment that over time, whether we realize it or not, these resentments become the focal point of our life. We wake up with a tightness inside of us, a weight on our shoulders. The way we deal with other people. Have you ever noticed that when you're mad at somebody, like a spouse or someone close to you, you tend to be pretty snippy with everybody else too? And it's like if I just go to whoever I'm mad at and work out whatever that is, maybe I'm not going to be snippy with everybody else over here, but it becomes to just infiltrate every part of how we operate in our life. Sometimes we see it and sometimes we don't. Making amends is about stopping, stepping back, and honestly saying, what was my role in this situation? How can I humbly, and it requires humility, how can I humbly say, this is where I may have fallen short? And ask for forgiveness. We have to have a different vantage point to focus on outside of our own resentments. I'm reading a new book that Anne Lamont actually wrote, and she tells a great story about a neighbor who they go on dog walks. She lives in California, and so imagine these big, beautiful walks through the woods and everything, and she has a dog. Or she doesn't, her friend has a dog. Her friend has a dog who gets a little aggressive whenever they see other dogs on the trail. And her friend finally figured out that the only way to keep the dog from being aggressive when they see other dogs is to give the dog 2 tennis balls to hold in its mouth at one time. And it's amazing. She said as long as the friend's dog has 2 tennis balls in his mouth, it's like he doesn't even notice that other dogs are around. He's not aggressive at all. He's got 2 tennis balls to focus all that attention and energy. Maybe if we refocus our lives, not so much on how everyone else has done us wrong, but on maybe what our part could have been, and just focus on that, those can serve as tennis balls. Refocusing our aggression, refocusing on what really needs to be worked on here, which is, I don't always get things right. I'm a broken person too. I mean, y'all, I'm a recovering perfectionist. You know how hard it is for me to say I'm wrong? I mean, just those words just make me cringe just to say I'm wrong. What? But we are. And I believe this is what the prophet Ezekiel can say to us. That whether we realize it or not, there may be things in the story of our life that have eaten away at our soul: anger, resentment, despair, hopelessness. And we operate throughout our daily lives. We go through the motions. We do all the things that we think we're supposed to do. And meanwhile, it's eating away inside of us to the point that we become nothing more than our souls are a bag of dry bones. We're not living the life God made us for. We think all hope is lost. We long for healing. We long for God's presence, but we don't know what to do next. And the prophet speaks a word to us in our anger and resentment to say, you don't have to live as a bag of dry bones. You don't have to go through the motions of life full of anger and resentment. You don't have to think that hope is lost. God says life is always possible. God speaks a word of life into your soul, even when it's the most parched and dry. God's love is stronger than any resentment that you think you can hold on to forever and ever. Amen. It's true. And God's love is what calls us to a place of humility and graciousness. To say, Lord, I don't know how to say I'm sorry. Can you teach me? And the words will come. And we make a list, and we remember who we've hurt. Sometimes they're the people closest to us. And we don't throw up into their face all the ways they failed us. Sometimes we just have to say, this is where I'm wrong. Hard stop there. And a quick word, too, because sometimes we get hurt with things that we were really victims of. And you say, how do I make amends for that? Like maybe I was a kid and, my parents weren't the best to me, or maybe whatever. And sometimes we just have to make amends with ourselves. To say, you don't have to beat yourself up quite so much. You don't have to stay angry at yourself for what you think you did or didn't do, or how you think you may have failed. You don't have to reduce your value to some decision or circumstance in life that it may not have turned out the best. You can say to yourself even, I'm sorry. God loves you. And out of that great love, we can love ourselves even. God's Spirit blows quietly and surely. new life in the hardest circumstances. How beautiful. Thanks be to God.